Welcome to this presentation on building resilient and agile teams with NLP. I am Elizabeth Terry, and I will be your presenter for this presentation. And here I have a slide that tells you a little bit about me, and you can read that, but let me just say that I am someone who really has a passion for developing human resources. I've done this most of my life. And about 7 years ago, I decided that I wanted to leave project management and to get back into a sort of one-on-one or group training situation so that I could just feel the difference that I am making to people's lives, because that's really important to me. And at that point, I decided that I wanted to study neuro-linguistic programming, which I'll tell you a little bit about as we go on in this presentation. So I'm a member of the Think, Grow, Lead team, and you may have heard of them. They are sales trainers across the Caribbean, and they have the only, as far as I know, sales academy that's accredited, which is established in Jamaica. They decided that they wanted to work with me to introduce a customer service program. And so we have established TGL Smile, which is a division of the TGL group. And we are all about diagnosing, recommending, and solving a whole host of ailments that impact organizations in the delivery of excellent customer service. Our mission is to develop customer-centric organizations that deliver results. The unique feature about this particular organization is that I have embedded neuro-linguistic programming in all of the training. So we start from the point of view that you can't smile on the outside unless you can smile on the inside. So we're working from the inside out. And incidentally, SMILE stands for Service Made into Life-Changing Experiences. As well as that, I do have my own company, Limitless Transformation Coaching and Training Services Limited, and I do offer individual and group coaching. So why are you here? Well, I imagine that you are here because, maybe particularly because of COVID, and there are a number of impacts that COVID has had, maybe on you personally as well as your staff. As HR professionals, we notice when things start to go awry very quickly, and we see the disengagement. We realize that the morale is low, that productivity is down, and we have to do something about it. But we have to put on our own oxygen masks as well in this process so that we will be able to effectively lead our teams. So I thought I'd share with you and begin today to let you know what we are doing. For this presentation, I will be introducing to you the power of neuro-linguistic programming. Some of you may be aware of NLP and some may not, so I thought I would start with that today, and how NLP can help you in the transformation of management performance using a number of techniques, which I will share with you. Additionally, to support personal development, both of you and especially of your leadership and management team at this time. And we will end with a bit of discussion around coaching for results. How do you ensure that you can actually get the sort of outcomes that you want in your coaching conversations? So let's begin here by looking at the impact of COVID mindset on on societies, what really is happening in societies. And as we see by these statistics, which I found, and this was a few months ago, 18% of persons have been impacted by the pandemic directly or indirectly. And I think that number is much larger now. This was done around March of this year. And importantly, 22% of persons are state. They identify themselves as suffering from anxiety and 19% worrying about running out of money. Sorry. And so this is really a concern as HR professionals. Another thing that is changing and has changed already, employee expectations in terms of how they are working now and how they want to work in the future. A lot of people are now getting much more comfortable about working from home. And there are, of course, pros and cons with that. I know organizations have been holding back a bit for quite some time on establishing remote teams. And I think that's really because they wondered whether persons would be responsible, how would they manage accountability, and so forth. And now we are forced to examine and to actually establish this kind of modus operandi for our teams. And because persons are now doing it, 36%, according to Blake Morgan research, would like to continue working from home. And that number may actually be higher. Now, what are some of the challenges that this change in mindset is causing us? So only 15% of employees worldwide are engaged at work. And that was from a Gallup poll in February of this year. I dare say the number is greater now. And you may be noticing some of that even within your own organization. Morale may be down, people feeling, like, what's the point? Or, how can I get through this? So employee engagement is really critical because, of course, the more employees are engaged on the job, is the better the performance. Challenge number 2, balancing empathy with accountability. 58% of employees say poor management is the biggest thing getting in the way of productivity. Can you imagine? So the ability, especially during this period, to be able to connect with employees, even whilst we are demanding accountability, but the sense of connection and caring is so very important for us as managers, as leaders, to be able to check in with our staff. And it's not just about the work. We want to have a more holistic approach to managing our staff. And the third challenge is really managing personal well-being and resilience. 61% of employees are burned out on the job. And I believe that some of this is caused also by working from home. Because if you are at home, and I work from home myself, and so if you are working from home, then you tend to not be, at least initially, not as structured. So you may be doing work and then you hop off and you do something else, and the work keeps coming, and maybe your boss, who would not normally have been calling you at 8 o'clock at night, is now calling you. And so those boundaries of location are no longer there. And we have to be able to manage that well, otherwise people will actually burn out much more easily. So what is the solution to some of these issues that we are facing? How can we better manage the situation to be able to really get the results that we want? So I'd like here to introduce you to neurolinguistic programming and what it is, and then move into more about how it can help you produce more agile and resilient teams, as well as helping yourself. So NLP is, if I may break it down for you, let's start with neuro. So neuro is really about how you take in information and encode it internally in your mind, in your brain. And so this produces thinking patterns. So these thinking patterns or thoughts affect, of course, our experiences. The second aspect is linguistic. And of course, that means verbal and nonverbal, the ways that we communicate with others. And importantly, our self-talk. How are we communicating with ourselves? What is the meaning that we are attaching to certain experiences? And the third is programming. Programming. This is the strategy and strategies that we are using as individuals, as groups, as leadership and management to get our results. Now, some of those strategies are working really well for us, and some may not be, especially in this dispensation. So we believe that we can study excellence. In fact, NLP was based on the study of excellence in the area of therapy. And what one was doing, in the case of getting excellent results like Virginia Satir, for example, and what another like Milton Erickson was doing were different, but they were able to distill that, that information, the theories, and come up with very practical tools that we can use to extract excellence from others and to install it within ourselves. So our thinking is whatever somebody else can do, it means we have the ability to do it as well. So some of the tools that we have can help you to better manage your state. So we call state is really, you know, your emotional mood at the moment, state management. So your mind and your behavior are, of course, intrinsically connected. So you think, you feel, and then you behave. So if you are able to manage your state, then you're ultimately going to get better outcomes. Secondly, overcome engagement and conflict challenges in the work environment. So we have tools to help you negotiate challenges, to get agreement when parties may be, you know, at different sides of the problem. How do you bring those parties together to enable a solution which is workable for both? To develop powerful, persuasive communication skills. Now, as HR practitioners and leaders, if we don't have good communication skills, then we don't have the ability to provide our staff with the kind of changes in the organizational environment that we desire and that we feel is important for our employees to be able to be more effective. And finally, empower ourselves and leaders in the organization. Now, more than ever, we have to recognize that leadership is not just about doing, it's about being. And I'll explain this a little bit more in a moment. But how do we get empowered so that we can be effective in the workplace in really achieving those bottom line results that our stakeholders want from us? So let's move firstly into the transformation of management performance. How can NLP help you in doing just that? So I want to share with you this model called the Be, Do, Have model. Now, if we start at the do part of the model, I'm sure you would recognize this cycle of plan, do, check, act. And certainly we use it in project management a lot and management also. And as leaders, we'll be very familiar with the doing aspect of this. Now, where I want to take you is to the being aspect, because being is really where we have our power to change. And that being is demonstrated, is reflected internally in our thinking, and of course, then our feeling, which is then translated into certain actions and behavior. And in the case of an organizational context, this will be translated into your vision that you have as an individual or as an organization, the culture, the values of the organization, and of course, your leadership style. How do you lead your people so that you can get the results that you want? So it's a 1, 2, 3. So the being affects the doing, and the doing, of course, together with the being will enable you to have success. So in NLP, we take you back to the beginning point, the mind, the thoughts, the feelings, the mindset, all of those things that are critical to ensuring success. We have a critical equation that we take people through when we begin either coaching or training. And the question is, which side of this equation, cause or effect, are you on? And I come from the view that cause is always greater than being on the effect side. When you are on the effect side, you always have reasons for why these results that you had planned for haven't been achieved. And we may say, but there's not everything that we can control. And sometimes, stuff happens and we actually, are not able to control everything. But here's the thing. If we jump over to this side of the equation, to the cause side, we get results. Why? Because we take 100% responsibility always for the results that we get, even when we identify other factors that maybe have intervened. Because we know that with everything that we do, there is always a lesson in it. And if we can learn from the lesson, then we will be able to get a better result. So coming from the point of view of 100% responsibility is a very critical part of being able to lead your team effectively and get the outcomes that you want. So the question is really, who is sitting in your chair? Who is driving your car? Who is holding on to the steering wheel? And if it's someone other than you or something other than you, then you need to take it back, because that's how you will be truly empowered. I wanted to share with you what we call logical levels of change. This was actually developed by one of the founders, the early founders of NLP, Robert Dilts. And this paradigm here, this paradigm shows you that there are different levels on which change actually takes place. Now, at the tippy top is, of course, this idea fundamental that we are spiritual beings. But we tend to focus, certainly at an organizational level, at the level of identity. And the identity would be, of course, the mission of the organization, the vision. Who are you as an organization? And this can also be translated into you as an individual. Who do I think I am? And this, of course, impacts at the level down the values and beliefs, skills and knowledge that are needed in the organization, the actual behavior of the leaders, the employees, and of course, the environment in which you are operating. And so how this paradigm works is that the level above influences the levels below. So if you want to effect change, for example, and you are focusing solely at the acquisition of skills and knowledge, and that's where you are putting your attention, then you need to appreciate that above that you have the values and beliefs and the identity of the organization and of the team and of the individual that need to influence and support the skills and knowledge that you are giving with that training, and ultimately the behavior that you want to have happen in the organization and the environment. So when you are, and I know this word has come up frequently in the last few months, pivoting, I wanted to show you that in order to pivot from your present state, whether that's at an individual level or whether that's at an organizational level, you need to be looking at all of those aspects of the paradigm. The identity, your beliefs and values as an organization, your mission, your culture, the capability, the skills, the training, the abilities of your staffing, the behavior, what kinds of actions people are taking, how are people relating to one another, what is the leadership exemplifying, and of course the environment. And that is, well, now a bit different in an environment where people are not necessarily, for example, in the same location, just by way of one example. So in order to pivot effectively and change an organization, you start in what we call the present state. And there is a goal that you have to move to some other desired state. And in order to do that effectively, then you must be looking at all aspects of the organization in order to really pivot and to bring about that desired state or desired change in the organization. I also want to share with you some leadership coaching frames. We have many in NLP, but I just selected 6 of them, which I'll discuss in more detail. So the first one is respect for everyone's model of the world. The second is the meaning of communication is the response you get. The third, law of requisite variety, the most flexible behavior controls the system, and you control your mind and therefore your results. We have all the resources we need to succeed. And finally, if something isn't working, do something different. So these principles are frames that we use in all of the activities that we do in neurolinguistic programming, as well as I mentioned many others. So let's take a look at everyone has a different model of the world. So what does that mean? Quite obvious, I guess. The people you work with will have different points of view to you. And it doesn't mean that they are wrong and you are right. So people come from different viewpoints. They have had different past experiences. They may have different values. And they have a different point of view, a different mindset. And we call that mindset a different model of the world and how it works. So it's important to understand this because it enables you to accept differences in other people and to better appreciate how to motivate and drive persons, because not everybody is going to be motivated by the same things. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to agree also with the difference, but you accept it and find a way to be able to work with that individual productively. The second is the meaning of communication is a response you get. Very interesting. So if when you have communicated with someone, you do not get the desired response. For example, if I get a report, I've asked for a report, and it doesn't meet my expectations, whose issue is it? We come from the point of view that you need to examine yourself first. How did I communicate my expectations? Was I clear? Did I check to make sure that the person fully understood? Did I provide the coaching? Was there any training that was necessary that was not provided? So all of these questions come back to being cause to your effect, right? Firstly, as a leader, as a manager, how have I communicated? So here, the importance is to review the style, the approach that you have taken, and maybe to have a different way of communicating exactly what you want. People have different communication styles, and we teach you exactly how to better communicate in those different styles. Thirdly, the person with the most flexibility will achieve the most, the best results, really. And we call it the law of requisite variety. So if you don't get the result the first time around, then you need to do something different until you do. Not just, wave your hands in the air or get upset, get angry. The most adaptable person on the team is going to find the solution to the problem. This is the person that may have a way out crazy idea, but that's who you want to be able to listen to and to hear out, because they're coming from a different point of view, but maybe because it's different, might sound crazy, but maybe that's exactly what, if you examined it carefully, would actually give you the solution to the problem. So if you are flexible and you stay open-minded, you will get the result that you want. We control our minds and therefore our results. So we all have choices about how we think and then how we influence how we feel, because first comes thought, then comes feeling, then comes behavior. So if our results are dependent on our mental state and our emotional state, then you have to get yourself into the best emotional state possible in every interaction in order to get the results that you want. So we actually teach you ways, and I will share some of them today with you, that you can get into a good emotional state. People have the capacity to do anything that is required in order to succeed, because we come from the point of view we have all the resources to succeed. We're not broken. We actually do have it. We just need perhaps a coach or a trainer or a leader or manager to help us to connect the dots. So we're all about helping our clients, our employees, our colleagues to tap into those perhaps unknown reserves of skills and attitudes and personality traits that you haven't yet learned about, maybe haven't acknowledged that you have them, and then learn how to use them. And if something isn't working, do something different. Sounds easy enough, doesn't it? But how many times have we just gone doggedly at something, although we've given it the time, we've given it the effort, and we still do the same thing? So if you always do what you always have done, you'll always get what you always got. If we resist change, then we miss out on possible improved results. So we need to be willing to do something different and make sure that you change your style, your approach, until you find something that in fact works. The next topic that I'd like to introduce you to is how we support personal development. And as I said in the beginning, as HR leaders, we need to put on our own gas mask first, our own oxygen mask, to make sure that we have all that is required to manage your state appropriately and to be in charge of our life and our affairs. And how best can we do that is to look at how do we develop resilience. So mindset really is your model of the world, how you perceive how things work in the world, both at an individual level and generally. It's a collection of attitudes, beliefs, values, thoughts, and feelings, which then translate into behaviors and actions and choices. They're formed by usually intense experiences that we've had in the past. Also, well, some of those, of course, can be quite traumatic, and some maybe not so much, but anything that has an emotional charge on it, whether positive or negative, would be the things that we really remember. Pervasive cultures. So even at an organizational level, stories about how things are done around here have been done in the past and continue to be done now, sometimes known as a sort of informal culture of the organization. These are all really, really important in forming that mindset, particularly on the job. Learning and growth. Thank God we can change. If we couldn't, then all of us would be out of work, right? So learning and growth is so important. And social groups that include you or exclude you. And here, I mean, if you identify with a particular social group, you know, maybe Black Lives Matter, if it was in the US, or something like that, then there's certain values that are attached to being in there, and those help to form your outlook on life. It can be altered by impacting values. And sometimes we think, well, values can't be changed. Yes, they can, but it does take a particular kind of intervention to enable that. And of course, values impact the choices, and through changing in learning and growth through training and coaching, of course. What are some of the factors that helped build resiliency? Well, first of all, strong connections and relationships with others. And I think this more than at any other time in history, when we are now forced to physically distance from one another, how do we still make the emotional connections? Provide social support. I was just reading an article by the Institute of Coaching around resilience is really about, it's created by villages. So, you know, it takes a village to raise a child. Well, the research is showing that it really takes a village to provide the support required for resiliency to be developed. Develop high trust within networks, and obviously this applies to organizations. So which one of our organizations is at the pinnacle of trust? It's something that we grapple with at an organizational level, and sometimes even at an individual level, between individuals on the job, between teams. Building that trust is absolutely critical. And how can we do it? Foster play in the workplace. It's not all about work. It's about bringing a level of playfulness into the workplace so that we can build trust, for example, so that we can change the energy a bit of the organization and individuals, and so that we can bond. Develop self-management skills for self-nurturing and coping, and I'll be sharing a few of those here shortly with you. And encouraging authenticity. We want people to be authentic and to act mindfully. And certainly at an organizational level, we want our employees or staff or managers or leadership in particular to be really careful about what they are exemplifying. What are they modeling for their staff and employees? What are you modeling? And it needs to be in alignment with the values of your organization and hopefully your own personal values. Resilience requires a cluster of behaviors, thoughts, actions, attitudes, and skills that foster commitment to an organization and the organizational mission and values, the control of the environment as much as we can to build in that level of certainty within us as an individual of our ability to find solutions, and of course challenge, because challenge is what helps us to grow. So it's not necessarily a bad thing when we face difficult times, because it is through those difficult times that we actually are able to develop new muscles and to grow and evolve. So it's finding that balance. It's the problem versus solution mindset. So it's finding new solutions to old problems, and that really is the heart of creativity. So if you are a leader who is a possibility thinker, you are going to get more out of your staff in terms of ideas, of innovations, and ways to solve problems, rather than if you are focusing on the problem alone. I know a lot of the techniques that we have in project management and in management, we focus heavily on the problem itself, the root cause, which of course is important. It has a place. But we also want to be able to dream above the problem and to think abstractly and to say, how can I come up with solutions to this? And when you begin to have that possibility mindset, then it gives you the confidence to find a way to achieve what you want. How can you influence your emotional state? I think this is probably a question that you're asking, particularly because now when there's so much going on and so much coming at us, we say, well, it's just impossible to feel a sense of calm and resolve and confidence. But it's not impossible. We can do it. So thoughts and the situation, of course, external to us, is what really triggers our response. And it triggers our response firstly on a level of thought. And what's going on inside your head? Are you thinking immediately of the worst possible outcome? Are you, anxious? What do I do now? And that emotional anxiety has an effect on our physical well-being. When we are anxious and we are in an elevated state of anxiety for a lot of the time, then we are going to feel tired and exhausted. We are expending so much energy internally that we feel tired. And of course, at an even deeper level, this can lead to, of course, other kinds of physical ailments like high blood pressure and heart problems and so forth. But we want to be able to keep ourselves in a good feeling place. And if you are not in a good feeling place, if you are in the anxiety mode, then what happens is that it triggers your reptilian brain into the fight, flight, or freeze response. And that immediately shuts down our creative center in our brains. And so we need to find a way to manage that cycle. And in fact, we say we need to find a way to interrupt that pattern. So what do we do? How do we change that behavior so that we can really get the results that we want and stay in a good feeling place? Well, I'll share with you what we call the results framework, which is that an event happens outside, aka COVID, and then we react to it. And when we react to certain things, what happens is that we tend to miss the mark. We have reacted, and that reaction, when it's a knee-jerk response, 10 chances to 1 is going to not take us to the result that we want. We miss the mark. But if we step back and we allow ourselves time to respond to the situation rather than react, we will in fact hit the target. So it is the ability to step back and to take what we call the metacognitive position, where we are reflective of what's going on and in fact recognizing that we are actually in control of our thoughts. It's not like a runaway train. We can put on the brakes. So here are a few tips to help you put on those brakes. And one of them is a physical response. So anytime you feel yourself really in a knot and wondering, how am I going to cope with the situation? And you feel yourself going in a downward spiral, then practice this breathing technique. It's called the 4-7-8 breath technique, and it comes from yoga. And so it's taking in breath on a count of 4. So that's relatively slow, but not too slow. And then holding for a count of 7 and exhaling for a count of 8. And what that does when you do that a few times, in for 4, hold for 7, out for 8, is it actually calms your physical sense of anxiety. And you begin to feel more at peace and more relaxed. So I suggest anytime you feel yourself spiraling out of control, stop and practice this 4-7-8 breathing technique. Secondly, create a relaxation anchor. Now, in our training, in our practitioner training, we teach you how to do this in a more formal way. But just to give you an idea of what that could be, think of a time when you felt particularly relaxed, very, very peaceful. What did you see? What did you hear? What did you feel? Maybe you can bring to mind a scene. It might be a scene at the beach for some of us, or maybe it's a scene in the hills overlooking a very peaceful valley, or some other time when you really felt that sense of peace. Just really get yourself into it. And at the same time, memorize that image that you have in your mind. And so that every time you bring up that image, you will automatically feel a sense of peace and calm. And finally, when we are feeling overwhelmed, much of the time it's because we think everything has to be done right this minute. It has to be done today. But often enough, it's not so. If we look at that long 20-point list of things to do today, we will probably find that there are some things that we can shift around and do tomorrow, or maybe even the next day, so that we can better manage the situation that we find ourselves in and have a better state. So prioritize. And the daily practices, discipline and diligence. I think having something in the morning every day that you do is very important to get yourself in a good feeling place before you either leave the house for work or get to your computer, wherever that may be. 20 to 40 minutes if you can manage it, but even 10 will be better than nothing. If you are comfortable with meditation, then use this time for meditating, visualizing, journaling, whatever it is. And importantly, some physical exercise. This also helps to keep us centered. Write down 3 goals for the day. Talked about prioritizing. 3 goals, just 3, because you want to have focus. And when you get home in the evening, spend some time in reflection. When your day is done, what did I achieve? What did I learn? And what will I do differently tomorrow? Because we have not necessarily achieved everything that we wanted to, there is always a lesson in it. And if we can get the lesson, then we will be able to do better tomorrow. So it is to be honest with ourselves and not beat up on ourselves ever. We're not talking about any kind of self-flagellation. We just want to be able to learn from the experience and be better tomorrow. Coaching for results. I wanted to share with you this slide, which talks about the information that we process on a second by second basis. So coming at us through all of our senses, about 11 million bits per second of sensory data, right? So as you can imagine, in this day and age when we are so plugged into our computers and social media and every other thing, there's a lot of information coming at us. And we actually only at a conscious level taking about 126 bits per second. And we call that categorized into 7 plus or minus 2 chunks of information. So if you consider that like a list of 7 things, some people will have 7 that they easily remember. Some people will better remember 5. Some people may even remember 9. So that's a plus or minus 2 chunks. But importantly here, we've moved from 11 billion bits per second of information to only 126 bits. So what has happened to the rest of it? Well, we have deleted, distorted, and generalized information. And what we delete and distort and generalize can impact, of course, our communication and how we are communicating with others. So one of the tools that we use for better coaching conversations is called the hierarchy of ideas. And at the tippy top, we have the most abstract. So we go into, the purpose of. This is at the higher level. So the purpose of, let's say, something quite mundane like transportation. The purpose of transportation is movement. For example. So we're going higher and higher up that hierarchy. But if we were going to go down the hierarchy and get into the details, you would want to have some more specifics about transportation. It might be different types. It might be planes or cars or railways or bicycles. And then you could go even further, different types of cars. You get into specifics. So we have different models to help us move up and down that hierarchy so that we can get agreement. Because folks, when we are speaking in too much detail, it's harder to get agreement. So we use the hierarchy of ideas through the tools that we will share in the NLP practitioner course to help you to move up that hierarchy and to get higher levels of abstraction, meaning strategic thinking, which is necessary at the leadership level in the organization, and to help us to get to agreement with individuals before we start getting down into the details. And of course, we get down into the details because when we are at an operational level and have to implement and execute, we need details. So this is where, project management has a real strong case, because we need to be able to get down into the nitty-gritty of things. And also to move laterally. There's an entire book, Edward de Bono wrote a book on, lateral thinking, and lateral thinking being the domain of the problem solver. How can we move from, a physical community, for example, where we all get together and get connected, to, for example, Facebook, an online community, one of the first online communities. So here, Mark Zuckerberg took this idea, the concept of a physical community, and translated it into a virtual community. I think that's a good example of lateral thinking. And here we have, another type of model, which is the meta model. So we say something on the surface, but like the tip of the iceberg, there's a lot more underneath it, right? What's that deep structure? And if you look at the right side of your screen, you will see I've written thought with UGH in the middle of it. And through that is the thought, that's the word. And through various processes of deletion, distortion, and generalization, we come up with ugh, That's all that we hear on the surface. So how do we, through our communication, through our questioning techniques, how are we able to drill down and get into the specifics so that we can uncover the deep structure of the information that the person is sharing with us in the coaching conversations? How do we get behind the mask to uncover the real problem? So here are some of the questions that we need to know and need to use. How do you know that? And somebody comes and says, yes, I know that X, Y, and Z is about to happen. How do you know that? What would happen if? What would happen if you didn't? Who or what specifically? People give blanket statements, right? It's always like this, or everyone does it. Who says? You know, who says that this is right? Compared to what or whom? I'm too busy to do it, right? I'm too old to do that. And, you know, you always give me, don't give me time to express myself properly. Never, right? So it's how do we uncover the lost information? So there's a whole slate of questioning techniques that we use in the meta model. And finally, building rapport. This is often an area that as leaders and as coaches, especially in a very time-bound environment, that we tend to overlook, or we only do it very cursorily. How do we build rapport? Because it is the key piece, especially in managing staff, managing your customers, managing your stakeholders, any kind of relationship. This part of the conversation is critical to getting the results that you want. How do you help people to instantly bond with you, to get them on the same page? Because rapport, as Tony Robbins says, who was a great, he's actually a trainer of neuro-linguistic programming, is power. Rapport is power, because that's how you're able to influence change at an individual and at an organizational level. So the ability to evoke trust, because rapport is really about trust. People like people who are like themselves. And as we know, everyone has a different model of the world. So we have to be so flexible that we are able to be chameleon-like and to reach inside to connect with someone, because we have learned their communication style and we speak in their communication style and we use our body language to build rapport instantly. This, folks, is the key to getting the results that you want. So here are some takeaways before I close off this presentation. First of all, performance excellence requires a mindset change. This is where you're going to get the difference that makes the difference. If you change everything else and you don't change the mindset, you will not get the results that you so desire. Results require 100% responsibility for each team member, not 50% here and 50% there. Everyone has to take 100% responsibilities for their outcomes, for achieving their objectives. Yes, we're working as teams, but of course, if everyone takes 100% responsibility, you can easily see that it's a win-win for everybody. Everybody wins. Successful pivoting requires organizational and individual adjustments from identity through values, beliefs, skills, and the environment. All of those are required to change in order to get you to your desired state. New leadership coaching frames are needed to balance empathy with accountability. Yes, we need accountability. Absolutely, especially when we come to managing remote teams. So we have to have the tools in place. We have to have the relationships to enable that to happen. But we also need to extend our care and to build that rapport. Language agility plus rapport means better coaching conversations and results. And finally, for self-care, develop a daily practice to build your inner calm and certainty. We are never going to be certain about what's going to happen in the environment, especially now. So that inner certainty has to be built from within. So some critical questions that I think you should now be asking yourselves. How would you assess your own level of knowledge and your level of your team in terms of their knowledge and skills in the key areas that I have shared with you on a scale of 0 to 10? Where are you? Where is your team on that? How would you assess your staff effectiveness in applying these skills? Because if you're at a 5, then you are missing opportunities. How do you achieve that? What is the impact of not being able to apply these competencies 100% to your business? What are you losing out? There's always an opportunity cost. So what are you missing? What's it costing the bottom line of your organization? So my offer today to you is to enroll in my NLP practitioner certification course, which is coming up in October. And this is some information about that program to develop your human resource management skills to build the resiliency and agility, the ability to influence and communicate effectively, to be able to build instantaneous rapport with others, to help you set and achieve the goals, not just set them as SMART goals, but to actually achieve them. Give you a set of techniques and tools and questions for getting to the root cause of problems, and also to achieving agreement and to better manage your meetings. Management frames for problem solving, and of course, strategies for success. It also gives you an advanced coaching toolkit. Learn how to coach organizational leaders to cause performance breakthroughs, and a complete personal development program for you as an individual, as an HR leader, so that you can eliminate within yourself internal conflicts and success blocks and create the future that you want for yourself and also for your organization. The program is both self-paced online and face-to-face, and you see here the dates that I'm sharing with you. And if we are at all going to be on lockdown for an extended period of time and we're not able to do the face-to-face, then we will be able to do it virtually as well. The preference is to have at least 4 days face-to-face. It's an 8-hour program with 20 hours self-paced online. It includes a manual, of course, and 2 books, one on NLP, one on timeline therapy, and 4 internationally recognized certifications. And you get a bonus for also identifying your preferred communication style and an online micro degree through which you can develop your rapport building skills with various communication styles. And for everyone who has attended this, I will actually give that to you once you connect with me. I will give you access to that bonus free of cost. I will be one of your facilitators, the lead facilitator, in fact, in this program. And I will be joined by co-facilitator Tanya Smith, who is also a certified NLP trainer and master coach. What is your investment? Well, the Act Now rate is $2,395 US, and the Act Now group rate is less 3%. So at an organizational level, then you will get a discount for 3 or more people of 15% of that cost. The standard individual rate is $2,895. So you can see off the top, you're saving $500 US. And the standard group rate for 3 or more is less 10%. So here you have the actual, the link for you to get more information and to register for that course. So it's MailChimp, mailchimp.mp/tgltrainers.com/NLP-prac-course. And you can get more information there. So I invite you to go and to find out more about how you can get NLP certification as an NLP coach, as a practitioner of timeline therapy, a practitioner of NLP, and also as a practitioner of hypnosis at the basic level. So Limitless Transformation is my company, and you can contact me at the address there, limitlesstransformationja.com, or on Facebook, Limitless Transformation Jamaica, and also at nlptrainingjamaica@gmail.com, or you can WhatsApp me at 876-556-5177. And of course, again, a reminder on how to register. So just contact me and I will send to you your bonus, your free quiz on your communication style, and the micro degree on what's my communication style, which will help you to not only understand yourself better, but to be able to better understand the communication style of others and to practice that. So it's been a real pleasure being with you. Thank you for joining me. And I look forward to meeting you in person or virtually.